My name is Amber Mitchell, and at 29, I thought I understood what family disappointment meant. Being excluded from Christmas was painful, but I never expected what came next. When I opened that envelope containing a $52,000 invoice for my sister Jessica's new car, something inside me finally snapped. 10 years of financial manipulation and emotional blackmail culminated in that moment. They pushed too far this time, so I made a call that changed everything. If you're watching this from a family gathering, cherish those genuine connections. Hit like and subscribe while I tell you how I finally stood up for myself and discovered what real family means. I grew up in Westchester County, New York, in a 5-bedroom colonial with manicured lawns and a 3-car garage. From the outside, the Mitchell family appeared perfect. My father, Richard, was a successful investment banker, and my mother, Diana, maintained her status as a fixture in local charity circles. On paper, we had everything. In reality, our home was an emotional wasteland where love was conditional and came with receipts. From the moment my sister Jessica was born when I was 4, the dynamic shifted. She was the golden child, beautiful and charismatic in ways I could never match. While I was studious and responsible, Jessica was vibrant and spontaneous. My parents adored these qualities in her but found them irritating in me. When Jessica threw tantrums, she was passionate. When I expressed my needs, I was difficult. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. Jessica received horseback riding lessons when she wanted them. I had to maintain straight as to justify my modest request for piano lessons. For her 16th birthday, Jessica received a brand new Audi. For mine, I got a used Honda and a lecture about appreciating practicality. Despite this, I worked hard. I graduated at the top of my class, earned a scholarship to Cornell, and double majored in economics and business. While Jessica dropped out of 3 different colleges, I was landing internships and building my resume. By 24, I had secured a position as a junior financial analyst at a prestigious firm in Manhattan. By 27, I had my own apartment, a healthy 401k, and was completely self-sufficient. My independence came at a price. Every family gathering became an opportunity for subtle jabs about how I was too career-focused or materialistic. The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents, who measured success in luxury cars and country club memberships, criticized my ambition while simultaneously exploiting it. The exploitation began small. Could I help Jessica with her rent this month? Could I loan Dad money for a business venture until his next commission? Could I contribute to Mom's charity gala since I was doing so well? Each request came wrapped in the promise of family unity and belonging. Each time I complied, the requests grew larger. 3 years ago, I paid off Jessica's credit card debt of $12,000 after she tearfully promised to be more responsible. 6 months later, she maxed it out again on a luxury vacation to Bali. When I expressed my frustration, my mother pulled me aside and explained that Jessica just experiences life differently, and reminded me how blessed I was to have financial stability. Last year, I covered my parents' property tax bill when they claimed to be a little short, despite purchasing a vacation home in the Hamptons that same month. When I questioned this, my father reminded me that they had sacrificed everything for my education, conveniently forgetting my scholarships and student loans, which I had only recently finished paying off. Despite these incidents, I still craved their approval. This past October, I made another attempt at repairing our relationship. I suggested a family weekend in Manhattan. My treat. I reserved a suite at a boutique hotel, secured tickets to a Broadway show Jessica had mentioned wanting to see, and made reservations at an exclusive restaurant. The weekend was pleasant enough, though my mother spent most of it critiquing my apartment size and location, while Jessica monopolized conversations with dramatic stories about her latest boyfriend drama. After that weekend, tensions with Jessica escalated further. She began calling me at work with financial emergencies, and sending passive-aggressive texts when I couldn't immediately respond. Meanwhile, my parents increased their not-so-subtle comparisons, always framing Jessica's financial irresponsibility as living life to the fullest, while my stability was somehow a character flaw. As November rolled into December, I found myself both dreading and longing for the holiday season. Despite everything, I had already purchased thoughtful gifts for everyone and was mentally preparing myself for the familiar dance of seeking approval while setting boundaries. I had no idea that this Christmas would be different, in the most painful way possible. The realization came on December 15th, an ordinary Wednesday that turned into anything but. During my lunch break, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw it. My cousin Taylor's post featuring my entire family gathered around a Christmas tree at my parents' home. Early Mitchell family Christmas. So blessed to have everyone together, read the caption. Everyone except me. I stared at my phone, trying to process what I was seeing. There was my father carving a turkey, my mother arranging presents, Jessica laughing with our aunts and uncles, cousins, grandparents, even distant relatives I barely recognized. Everyone was there. The celebration had apparently happened the previous weekend, and I hadn't received so much as a text. With shaking hands, I called my mother. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice artificially bright. "Oh, Amber, how are you, sweetheart?" "Mom, why wasn't I invited to the family Christmas last weekend?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, that. Well, it was very last minute, darling. We knew you're always so busy with work, and Jessica mentioned you had told her you had plans." I had told Jessica no such thing. When I pointed this out, my mother sighed dramatically. "Amber, please don't start. It was just a casual gathering, nothing formal. You know how Jessica gets when she feels overshadowed by you. She's going through a difficult time right now, and we didn't want to create any tension. You understand, don't you, sweetheart? You've always been our strong one." Being the strong one was code for the one we can dismiss without consequences. Before I could respond, she added that they would see me on Christmas Day for the real celebration. The invitation felt like an afterthought, a bone thrown to pacify me. Later that evening, Jessica sent me a series of texts. "Sorry you missed the party. Was so fun. Mom said you were busy anyway. By the way, can you help me pick out Mom's gift? I'm thinking jewelry but need your dollar input." No acknowledgement of the exclusion. No genuine apology. Just another request for money disguised as sisterly bonding. That night, I lay awake replaying years of similar incidents. The family vacation to Cancun I discovered through Facebook photos. My graduation dinner, where everyone was 3 hours late because Jessica had a minor fender bender that required immediate family attention. My promotion celebration that was cut short when Jessica called crying about a breakup. By morning I had made a decision. I texted my mother that I wouldn't be joining them for Christmas Day after all. I had made other plans. "What plans could be more important than family?" she responded immediately. Family. The word had become so hollow. I didn't answer. Instead, I called my friend Leah, who had been inviting me to join her family's holiday celebrations for years. Unlike my biological family, Leah's parents had always treated me with genuine warmth. When I visited, they asked questions about my work and actually listened to the answers. They remembered details about my life without keeping score of what I could do for them. "Of course you can join us," Leah said without hesitation. "Mom always sets a place for you anyway. You're family to us, Amber." The contrast between this immediate acceptance and my own family's calculated exclusion brought tears to my eyes. In the days leading up to Christmas, I threw myself into creating new traditions. I helped Leah's family decorate their tree. I baked cookies using her grandmother's recipe. I wrapped thoughtful gifts for people who actually valued my presence. For the first time in years, I felt the genuine warmth the holiday season was supposed to bring. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with increasingly manipulative messages from my family. My father called to say, "You're breaking your mother's heart." Jessica alternated between guilt-tripping texts and demands for shopping advice. Relatives I barely spoke to throughout the year suddenly had opinions about my selfish decision. The only message that didn't feel toxic came from my Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, who had always been something of an outsider herself. "I heard you're not coming for Christmas," she said when I answered her call. "Smart girl. I wanted to let you know that the casual gathering was planned 3 months ago. I saw the invitations when I was at your parents' house in September. The confirmation of their deliberate exclusion stung, but also provided clarity. And Patricia went on to share some family gossip that suddenly made the timing suspicious. Jessica totaled her car last month, you know. Drove it straight into a ditch after one of her nights out. Your parents have been scrambling to figure out how to get her a replacement without dipping into their Hamptons renovation fund. I thanked my aunt for her honesty and tried to push the information from my mind. I was determined to enjoy a peaceful Christmas with people who actually wanted me around. Christmas Day with Leah's family was everything I hadn't known I needed. We ate too much, played board games and shared stories, without agenda or manipulation. Nobody kept score of who gave what or commented on my career choices. When Leah's father toasted to family, both born and chosen, I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in years. I returned to my apartment that night with leftover pie, genuine hugs, and an invitation to their New Year's celebration. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to check my phone for messages from my biological family. I was beginning to understand that family should add to your life, not drain it. Little did I know that my journey to this realization was about to accelerate dramatically. January arrived with New York's typical post-holiday gloom. Gray skies, dirty snow, and the collective hangover of returning to normal life after the festive season. I threw myself back into work, finding comfort in spreadsheets and projections that behaved according to logical rules, unlike family dynamics. 3 weeks after Christmas, I was beginning to feel like myself again. The hurt of the exclusion had faded to a dull ache, and I was focusing on my New Year's resolutions. Setting better boundaries, prioritizing genuine relationships, and finally taking that financial certification course I'd been postponing. Then the envelope arrived. It was Thursday evening when I collected my mail. Among the usual bills and flyers was a thick manila envelope with my parents' return address. No note, just my name and address in my mother's elegant handwriting. Curious, I opened it while riding the elevator to my apartment. Inside was a stack of papers. The first page was an invoice for $52,000 from Luxury Motors of Westchester. The purchaser, Jessica Mitchell. The co-signer, Amber Mitchell. I almost dropped the papers in shock. Below the invoice was loan documentation for a brand new Mercedes GLE coupe with monthly payments of $1,138 for 60 months. My signature appeared on the co-signer line, a signature I had never provided. My hands trembling, I fumbled with my keys and barely made it inside my apartment before collapsing onto my couch. I flipped through the remaining papers, insurance documents, extended warranty information, and a handwritten note from Jessica. Thanks for helping with the new car. The old one was totaled, and I needed reliable transportation. Mom and Dad said you'd understand since you're doing so well. Payment details attached. First one due February 1st. Love you, sis. Zoxo. The casual entitlement of the note made my stomach turn. I immediately called my parents, my heart pounding in my chest. My father answered on the second ring. Amber, did you get the paperwork we sent? Dad, what is this? I never agreed to co-sign for Jessica's car. That's not my signature. Now, Amber, he said in the patronizing tone he'd perfected over the years. Don't be dramatic. We knew you'd want to help your sister. She's been through a trauma with the accident. The accident that was her fault, because she was driving drunk, I countered, recalling Aunt Patricia's revelation. That's beside the point. She needs a car for her new job. What new job? As far as I knew, Jessica hadn't held steady employment in years. She has an interview next week, he admitted. But she needs to make a good impression. The Mercedes will help with that. The absurdity of the statement would have been comical if it weren't so infuriating. Dad, someone forged my signature. That's fraud. I never agreed to this. Your mother signed for you, he said dismissively. We knew you'd be difficult about it. But family helps family. You make more than enough to cover the payments. I was speechless. The casual admission of fraud, the assumption that my income was theirs to allocate, the complete disregard for my autonomy. It was breathtaking in its audacity. "This is illegal," I finally managed. "I'm not paying for Jessica's car. Don't be selfish, Amber. After everything we've done for you." I hung up. Within minutes, my phone exploded with texts from Jessica. "Dad said you're being difficult about the car. I need this car, Amber. You're so selfish. You don't even drive a Mercedes, so why do you care? If you don't help me, I'll be stranded." Each message increased my disbelief. I turned off my phone and poured myself a generous glass of wine, trying to process what had just happened. The next morning I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. A quick online search confirmed my suspicions. If my name was fraudulently added as a cosigner, I could potentially be held liable for the loan, unless I reported the fraud. With growing unease, I logged into my bank accounts to make sure no unauthorized transactions had occurred. What I found sent a chill down my spine. Someone had attempted to access my main savings account the previous day, the account where I kept my emergency fund and down payment savings for a future home. Thankfully, the attempt had triggered a security alert due to the unusual activity, and the bank had frozen the account pending my verification. When I called the bank, they confirmed that the attempt had come from a recognized device. My old laptop, which I had given to my parents last year when I upgraded. The sense of violation was overwhelming. While I had been processing the car loan fraud, they had actually attempted to directly access my savings. This wasn't just entitlement, it was calculated theft. That afternoon, I received an email from my mother. "Amber, your father is very disappointed in your reaction. Jessica is heartbroken that you would abandon her in her time of need. As your mother, I must say I raised you better than this. Family stands together. The car has already been purchased, and Jessica loves it. Don't ruin this for her. She's planning to post about it on Instagram this weekend and wants to thank you publicly for your generosity. Don't embarrass her by creating drama." The email perfectly encapsulated the family dynamic. My feelings were irrelevant, Jessica's wants were paramount, and my only value was what I could provide. The mention of social media was particularly telling. Appearances mattered more than ethics or legality. By the end of the day, my shock had transformed into something else: determination. For the first time, I saw my family's behavior with perfect clarity. This wasn't love. This wasn't even family. This was exploitation, and it had gone on long enough. I made an appointment with a lawyer for the following day. Then I called Aunt Patricia. "I'm not surprised," she sighed after I explained the situation. "They did something similar to your cousin Ryan a few years ago with one of their timeshare purchases. He ended up paying rather than fighting it. They're counting on you doing the same." "Not this time," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "Not anymore." The lawyer's office was in a converted brownstone in Midtown, warm wood interiors contrasting with the January chill outside. Natalie Hoffman, the attorney Leah had recommended, reviewed the documents with a practiced eye, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "This is textbook fraud," she said finally, removing her reading glasses. "Your mother forged your signature on a legally binding financial document. The fact that she's your mother doesn't make it any less criminal." "What are my options?" I asked, clutching my coffee cup for warmth. "You have several, none of them pleasant," she replied candidly. "You can report the fraud to the police, which would likely result in criminal charges against your mother. You can report it to the bank and dealership as fraud without pressing charges, though they might pursue their own action. Or you can pay for a car you never agreed to buy." Put so bluntly, the choice seemed obvious. Yet decades of conditioning made me hesitate. If I report the fraud, what happens to the car? Most likely repossessed, unless your sister or parents can qualify for the loan without you. Given what you've told me about their financial habits, that seems unlikely. I nodded, processing this information, and my relationship with my family. Natalie gave me a sympathetic look. "I can't advise you on that aspect. But ask yourself, What kind of relationship do you currently have with people who would commit fraud against you? It was a fair question, and one that haunted me as I left her office with a clear legal strategy but an emotional maelstrom. When I turned my phone back on, I had 17 missed calls and 36 text messages. My father had escalated to threats. If you pursue this fraud nonsense, you can consider yourself cut off from this family permanently. Your mother is beside herself with your ingratitude. Jessica had alternated between rage and manipulation. I already showed everyone my new car. How could you do this to me? I told you about the job interview. I need to make a good impression. Remember when I covered for you when you crashed Dad's boat? You owe me. I had never crashed our father's boat. The fabricated leverage was almost impressive in its desperation. Even extended family members had been enlisted. Cousins I spoke to maybe once a year were suddenly messaging me about family loyalty and helping those in need. Uncle Robert, my father's brother and business partner, called to remind me that family disputes should stay private and suggested I was being overly legalistic about a simple misunderstanding. The coordinated pressure campaign only strengthened my resolve. I forwarded everything to Natalie and followed her advice to document all communications while limiting my responses. That evening, my boss Sandra called. I had returned to work but had been distracted, my usual precision noticeably absent. Amber, is everything all right? The Wellington presentation seemed off today, and that's not like you. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. I'm dealing with a family situation. My parents forged my signature on a car loan for my sister. I'm working with a lawyer to address it. The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. I see, Sandra finally said. That's significant. Do you need some time off? No, I said quickly. Work is actually helping me stay grounded. But I might need a flexible schedule for some legal appointments. Of course. And Amber, don't let anyone take advantage of you, family or otherwise. I learned that lesson the hard way. The unexpected support from my boss contrasted sharply with my family's behavior. It reinforced what I was slowly coming to understand. Respect wasn't determined by blood relation. 2 days later, I discovered that someone had attempted to access my investment accounts. The attempt failed due to two-factor authentication, but the pattern was clear. I immediately changed all my passwords and security questions, removing any information my family might know. Then my mother called. Amber Elizabeth Mitchell, she began, using my full name as she always did when laying on guilt. We need to discuss this car situation like adults. Your father and I are hosting dinner tomorrow night. Jessica will be there. We expect you at 7 o'clock. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summon. In the past, I would have complied immediately, eager for any opportunity to win their approval. This time, I agreed for entirely different reasons. I needed to set boundaries face to face. The next evening, I arrived at my parents' house exactly on time. The familiar colonial looked the same as always, perfectly maintained, impressively imposing, and utterly cold. Through the front window, I could see Jessica's new Mercedes parked prominently in the driveway, while my parents' vehicles were tucked away in the garage. My mother answered the door with an air kiss that didn't quite reach my cheek. Finally ready to be reasonable? She asked, leading me to the dining room where my father and Jessica waited. Jessica was scrolling through her phone, barely looking up when I entered. My father stood by the fireplace, tumbler of scotch in hand, his expression a practiced blend of disappointment and authority. Sit down, Amber, he said, gesturing to the chair across from Jessica. Your mother has prepared your favorite meal. Let's discuss this calmly. My favorite meal was actually Jessica's preference. I had disliked beef stroganoff since childhood, a detail they had never bothered to remember. Before we begin, my father continued as my mother served the food, I want to express our disappointment in your handling of this situation, involving a lawyer threatening fraud charges. This isn't how our family operates. How does our family operate, Dad? I asked quietly. By forging signatures. By attempting to drain my savings accounts. By excluding me from family gatherings and then expecting me to finance Jessica's lifestyle. Jessica slammed her fork down. Oh my God, are you still whining about Christmas? It was just a small gathering. It was our entire extended family, Jessica. Everyone but me. Because you're so judgmental. You make everyone uncomfortable with your perfect job and your perfect apartment and your constant criticism of my choices. My mother placed a hand on Jessica's arm. Amber, you know your sister is sensitive. You've always been jealous of her, and frankly, it's unbecoming for a woman your age. The familiar script was playing out exactly as expected. Jessica the victim, Amber the villain. Reality completely irrelevant. I'm not paying for the car, I said firmly. What you did was illegal. I've frozen all my accounts that you might have access to, and I've documented the fraud attempts. My father's face darkened. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I interrupted, surprising even myself. I worked for my scholarships. I paid off my student loans. I built my career through hard work and discipline. Meanwhile, you've supported Jessica through multiple failed degrees, bailed her out of credit card debt, and now committed fraud to buy her a luxury car she can't afford. We raised you, my mother snapped. We gave you a home and education opportunities. That's literally the minimum legal requirement of parenthood, I countered. And you've been making me pay for it ever since, as if I should be eternally grateful for basic parental responsibilities. Jessica, always quick to escalate, stood up so abruptly her chair tipped over. You think you're so much better than everyone. Newsflash, Amber. Nobody likes you. Even your boyfriend left because you're cold, calculating. My ex-boyfriend had actually left because he'd been cheating with Jessica, a fact they didn't know I was aware of. The casual cruelty was illuminating. These people weren't just taking advantage of me financially. They actively disliked me, while simultaneously expecting me to fund their lifestyle. If you don't pay for this car, my father said, his voice dangerously quiet, you are no longer part of this family. No more holidays, no inheritance, no connection to the Mitchell name. The threat that would have once devastated me now felt almost liberating. You're asking me to choose between $52,000 for a car I never agreed to buy and a family that commits fraud against me, attempts to steal from me, and treats me with consistent disrespect? I stood up, napkin placed neatly beside my untouched meal. That's not actually a difficult choice. As I walked toward the door, my mother called after me. Jessica needs that car. What is she supposed to do? I turned back one last time. The same thing I did when I needed transportation. Buy a car she can actually afford. The drive home was a blur, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had finally said things I'd been holding back for years. The relief was palpable, but so was the grief. I had just lost my family, or perhaps acknowledged the loss that had happened long ago. The aftermath of the family dinner brought unexpected clarity. Rather than the crushing guilt I had anticipated, I felt lighter, as if I'd put down a burden I'd been carrying for decades. Still, moments of doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Was family loyalty more important than self-respect? Had I irreparably damaged relationships that should be preserved at any cost? These questions followed me through sleepless nights and distracted workdays. I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Laura Chin, who specialized in family trauma. During our second session, she asked a question that stopped me cold. Amber, if a friend told you the story about their family, what would you advise them to do? The answer came immediately. I'd tell them to run and never look back. Why is it different when it's your own experience? I had no good answer. Meanwhile, my family escalated their campaign. Jessica posted photos of herself with a Mercedes on every social media platform, tagging me with captions like, "Best sister ever #blessed #family support," and "When your sister knows you deserve luxury #sibling love." The deliberate public narrative made it clear. If I reported the fraud, I would be cast as the villain who took away Jessica's prized possession out of spite. My parents' approach was more direct. They began contacting my friends and colleagues, sharing edited versions of the situation that painted me as mentally unstable and ungrateful. Several co-workers mentioned receiving concerned calls from my mother about my fragile state, and financial confusion. My father even called Sandra my boss, expressing worry about my ability to handle client funds given my emotional problems regarding family financial obligations. Fortunately, Sandra saw through the manipulation. "Your father called me today," she told me during our weekly check-in. "I've never heard such obvious damage control in my life, and I work with crisis PR firms regularly." The invasion of my professional life crossed yet another boundary. That evening, I met with my financial advisor, Marcus, to ensure my assets were completely secured. "Based on what you've told me, I recommend a complete financial firewall," he advised. "New accounts at different institutions, updated beneficiaries on all policies, and a thorough credit check to make sure there aren't other surprises lurking." The credit check revealed another shock: an application for a store credit card in my name from a high-end furniture retailer, dated just 2 days after the car purchase. The application had been rejected due to the fraud alert I had placed, but the attempt itself was telling. This wasn't just about Jessica's car. It was the beginning of what could have become systematic financial exploitation. As January turned to February, Jessica's social media campaign took a darker turn. She began posting about toxic family members who pretend to support you, and recognizing narcissists in your life. The projection was almost impressive. One post particularly stood out: a selfie in front of the Mercedes with a caption, "Some people would rather destroy what you love than see you happy. Stay strong against the haters, even when they're family." The comment section filled with supportive messages from relatives and friends who had no idea of the truth. Cousin Taylor, who had posted the Christmas gathering photos, commented, "Blood doesn't always mean love. Creating boundaries is self-care." The irony was painful. That night, I received the text that finally pushed me over the edge. Jessica, apparently drunk, judging by the typos and timestamps sent, "You think you are so much better than everyone, but you are just a lonely BTC with no one who loves you. Mom and dad only put up with you for your money. We all laugh at you behind your back. Enjoy your empty apartment while I enjoy my car." I stared at the message for a long time, a strange calm settling over me. The raw honesty of her drunk text confirmed what I had suspected. My family didn't love me. They tolerated me for what I could provide. The realization should have devastated me, but instead it felt like permission to finally let go. The next morning, with complete clarity and zero hesitation, I called Natalie Hoffman. "I'm ready to proceed with reporting the fraud," I told her. "All of it." "Are you sure? Once we start this process, it will be difficult to reverse." "I'm sure. They've left me no choice." Then I called the bank that had financed Jessica's Mercedes. "My name is Amber Mitchell," I said when I reached the fraud department. "I need to report a forged signature on an auto loan." The representative asked several verification questions, then transferred me to a manager named Robert. His voice was kind but professional as he guided me through the process. I explained the situation, providing dates, documentation, and contact information for Natalie. "I understand this must be difficult, Miss Mitchell," Robert said. "Family fraud is unfortunately common, but reporting it takes courage." "What happens now?" "Yes. We'll conduct an investigation, which typically takes 5 to 7 business days. If we confirm the fraud, as seems likely based on what you've shared, the loan will be removed from your name and credit report. The lender will then take appropriate action regarding the vehicle." "You mean repossession?" "Most likely, yes, unless the other party can qualify for the loan independently." I knew Jessica couldn't. Her credit was destroyed from years of missed payments and maxed-out cards. My parents could probably afford the payments but would be unlikely to take on the debt themselves. That would defeat their entire purpose of putting it in my name. "I understand," I said. "Please proceed." After hanging up, I sat in my silent apartment, the weight of my decisions settling around me. I had just initiated a process that would likely result in my sister losing her car and potentially lead to criminal charges against my mother for fraud. The family I had known was irretrievably shattered. Yet alongside the grief was something unexpected: pride. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself against the people who had been exploiting me for years. The cost was high. But the alternative, continuing to be their financial and emotional hostage, was no longer acceptable. I picked up my phone and texted Leah. I did it. I reported the fraud. Her response came immediately. I'm so proud of you. Want to come over for dinner? Dad's making his famous lasagna. I smiled through tears. Family, real family, was still possible, just not with the people who shared my DNA. The bank moved faster than expected. Just 3 days after my report, I received a call from Robert in the fraud department. Miss Mitchell, our investigation confirms your signature was forged on the loan documents. We've removed the loan from your credit report and financial responsibility. We're proceeding with repossession of the vehicle. How soon will that happen? I asked, my stomach tightening despite my certainty that I was doing the right thing. The repossession agent has been assigned. It could be today, tomorrow. They don't provide specific timing for obvious reasons. I thanked him and hung up, bracing myself for the fallout. It came even sooner than I anticipated. Less than 2 hours later, my phone exploded with notifications. Jessica was calling repeatedly, leaving increasingly hysterical voicemails between texts. They took my car. How could you do this to me? I am stranded at the mall. You ruined my life. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked her number, something I should have done weeks ago. My parents were next. My father's voice, usually so controlled, shook with rage in his message. What you've done is unforgivable. Your mother is in tears. Jessica is devastated. I never thought my own daughter could be so vindictive and cruel. Don't bother calling back. You're no longer welcome in this house. I blocked their numbers too, then methodically went through my contacts, blocking every family member who might serve as their proxy. Felt like cutting off limbs, but also like excising a cancer. Social media became a battlefield. Jessica posted a tearful video about her car being stolen due to family betrayal, carefully crafting a narrative that portrayed her as the victim without mentioning the fraud. Relatives and family friends commented with outrage and support, condemning the unnamed villain who had hurt sweet Jessica. I deactivated all my social accounts. The court of public opinion didn't matter. The truth did. The next day, the other shoe dropped. My mother had been contacted by the bank's fraud department. Faced with evidence of the forgery and potential criminal charges, she was scrambling. Her lawyer called Natalie, floating vague offers of family reconciliation and financial restitution if I would withdraw my fraud claim. They're running scared, Natalie told me. The bank has clear evidence of forgery, which is a felony. They're hoping you'll back down to protect your mother from criminal charges. What do you advise? Yes. That depends on what you want. If your goal is justice, we continue. If your goal is separation with minimal further conflict, we could negotiate a settlement that includes a formal admission of wrongdoing, financial compensation for your legal fees, and legally binding agreements that they'll never attempt to access your finances again. Chose the latter. I didn't want my mother to go to jail, not out of love at this point, but because the family drama would never end if she became a martyr to Jessica's cause. I wanted clean closure, not an ongoing saga. The settlement negotiations took 2 weeks. My parents, faced with the reality of potential criminal charges, agreed to my terms with surprising speed. They would pay all my legal fees, sign notarized admissions of the fraud, and agree to legally binding non-contact orders. In exchange, I would not press criminal charges. Throughout this process, I received unexpected support from quarters I hadn't anticipated. Aunt Patricia called to tell me she was proud of me. Someone needed to stand up to them. They've been pulling these stunts for years, and everyone's been too afraid of being cut off to say anything. Even more surprisingly, my cousin Ryan reached out. I heard what happened with the car. Just wanted you to know I went through something similar with them 3 years ago. I wish I'd had your courage. The family I thought would stand united against me was revealing cracks I'd never noticed. Other victims of my parents' manipulation who had been suffering in silence. The day the settlement was finalized, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Jessica using a friend's phone to bypass my block. You think you've won, but you've lost everything. Enjoy your money and your empty life. We're all better off without you. Her words were meant to wound, but they landed differently than she intended. Yes, I had lost my biological family. But what exactly had they contributed to my life beyond stress, manipulation, and exploitation? The emptiness I felt wasn't from their absence. It was from realizing they had never truly been present as loving family members in the first place. That evening, I met Leah and her parents for dinner. They had become my support system throughout the ordeal, offering practical help and emotional stability without judgment. To Amber, Leah's father toasted, raising his glass, for having the courage to choose self-respect over appeasement. Not everyone does. As we shared a meal filled with genuine conversation and laughter, I realized I wasn't grieving the loss of family. I was grieving the illusion that I had ever had one, and celebrating the discovery that family could be found elsewhere. 6 months passed, bringing summer heat to New York and unexpected peace to my life. The legal battle with my family had concluded, the settlement enforced, and the non-contact orders maintained. My mother had avoided criminal charges. Jessica had eventually secured financing for a much more modest vehicle through my parents, and I had begun the process of healing from decades of emotional manipulation. The transition wasn't easy. There were nights I woke up panicking, convinced I had made a terrible mistake. Holidays and birthdays brought complicated emotions. Mother's Day was particularly difficult. I found myself standing in the card aisle at the drugstore, staring at messages celebrating loving mothers, feeling like an alien observing a custom from another planet. But there were surprising benefits to cutting toxic ties. My work performance improved dramatically. Once I wasn't constantly managing family crises, I received a substantial promotion and bonus, which I invested rather than diverting to family emergencies. My apartment, once criticized by my mother as depressingly small, became a peaceful sanctuary, decorated exactly as I pleased. Most importantly, I discovered what genuine relationships felt like. Without the constant drain of my biological family, I had emotional energy to invest in friendships that had withered under the strain. I joined a book club, started taking weekend hiking trips with a group from work, and even began dating again, this time with healthier expectations and boundaries. Therapy with Dr. Chen continued weekly, then bi-weekly, as I developed stronger coping mechanisms. Family trauma doesn't disappear overnight, she reminded me. Healing isn't linear. There will be setbacks and difficult days. The goal isn't to never feel pain about your family. It's to process that pain in ways that don't derail your life. One unexpected aspect of recovery was learning to recognize and correct the distorted thinking patterns my family had instilled. I no longer felt guilty for setting boundaries. I stopped apologizing for my success. I recognized that generosity shouldn't require self-sacrifice and that love shouldn't come with invoices. In July, I received an email from Aunt Patricia. She and Uncle Stephen were celebrating their 40th anniversary with a small gathering at their lake house and wanted me to attend. No drama, no manipulation, just good food and better company, she promised. And absolutely no other Mitchells invited. I accepted, curious but cautious. The weekend proved to be a revelation. Aunt Patricia had always been the family rebel, maintaining distance from my parents' materialistic values while still participating in obligatory gatherings. Away from their influence, she was vibrant, funny, and surprisingly insightful. "Your mother was always like this," she told me as we sat on the dock watching the sunset. Even as a teenager, she measured everything in terms of what she could get from people. "Your father was a perfect match, equally transactional, equally status-conscious. When you were born, I'd hoped you'd somehow escape their influence." "I did," I said. "Just took 29 years. She squeezed my hand. "Better late than never." The most unexpected reconciliation came in August. My cousin Taylor, who had posted the Christmas photos that revealed my exclusion, reached out via email. Unlike the rest of the family, her message contained a genuine apology. "I've been thinking about what happened at Christmas and everything since," she wrote. I didn't understand the full situation then, but I've seen how Aunt Diana and Uncle Richard have been rewriting history, and it's opened my eyes to patterns I never noticed before. I'm sorry I participated in hurting you. If you're open to it, I'd like to reconnect. On your terms. No pressure. We met for coffee at a neutral location. The conversation was awkward at first but gradually warmed as we shared our respective experiences with the family dynamic. Taylor revealed that since my departure, Jessica had become increasingly demanding, and my parents more openly manipulative with other family members. It's like they need someone to use, she observed. When you left, they just redirected to other targets. I felt a pang of guilt, quickly followed by clarity. I wasn't responsible for protecting others from my parents' behavior. Each person had to recognize the pattern and make their own choices. Taylor and I agreed to proceed cautiously with rebuilding our relationship. No family gossip, no pressure to attend events where my parents would be present, just occasional meetups between two adults with shared history. By fall, I had established a new normal. My finances were completely secured, my career was thriving, and my social circle consisted of people who valued me for myself rather than what I could provide. I still had moments of sadness about what my family relationship could have been, but they no longer dominated my emotional landscape. In October, exactly 1 year after my ill-fated attempt to repair family ties with a Manhattan weekend, I received a text from Jessica. Despite the non-contact order, she had found a way to reach me through a work colleague's phone. I hate what you did, but I get it now, she wrote. Dad and Mom have been putting me in charge of Thanksgiving and expecting me to pay for everything. When I said I couldn't afford it, Dad suggested I borrow from my 401k. I remembered what you said about buying things I can actually afford. You were right. Don't respond to this. I'll deny everything if they find out I contacted you. Just wanted you to know. I didn't reply but saved the message. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. Jessica was beginning to see the pattern, though whether she would break it remained her choice. As the holiday season approached again, I found myself reflecting on all I had learned. The car invoice that had once seemed like the worst crisis of my life had actually been a gift, the final push I needed to recognize and escape a lifetime of exploitation disguised as family love. I had learned that family isn't defined by DNA, but by mutual respect, genuine support, and love that doesn't come with conditions or receipts. I had discovered that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I had realized that walking away from toxic connections isn't failure. Sometimes it's the bravest form of self-respect. This Christmas would be different. I had accepted Leah's invitation to join her family at their cabin in Vermont. I had a new tradition of volunteering at a local shelter on Christmas Eve. I had plans for New Year's with colleagues who had become friends. My life wasn't empty without my biological family. It was fuller, healthier, and infinitely more peaceful. The journey hadn't been easy, and it wasn't completely over. I would always carry the scars of my upbringing, the whispers of self-doubt, the reflexive guilt. But I had learned to recognize those thoughts as echoes, not truth. I had discovered that family is something you can choose, and love is something you should never have to purchase. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates with you, please know that you deserve relationships that add to your life rather than drain it. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. And sometimes, the hardest decisions lead to the most peaceful outcomes. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice for your own well-being? What helped you through it? Don't forget to like this video if it spoke to you, subscribe for more stories of resilience, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, real family supports your growth, not your bank.